Greetings to you all in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. My name is Austin Maragala. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. As always, it is a pleasure to have you all here with me on this quest to learn about what God says about worry, about stress, anxiety, so on and so forth. I've created a new playlist for this series, so if you haven't watched the previous video or any of the other videos, you can do that. Or if you just want to rewatch a video to help you remember the things that we've talked about, you can do that too. It's totally up to you. So the title and question that we're all trying to answer today in this video is, what is the relationship between faith and worry? And when I was first studying this, I didn't really realize at first how important your faith is when it comes to Christianity, especially when it comes to your Christian life. Because when you are a Christian, you experience trial after trial after trial, and many times it can tear you down, it can wear you down, it can allow you to be emotionally exhausted. So I really hope in this video you'll begin to understand how through our faith we can deal with the worry and the stress that we deal with on a daily basis. Worry is about, in this moment, worrying about the next moment to somehow try to capture the attention of God, or somehow being able to harness some power where there's certainty about tomorrow. Isn't it interesting how when we get worried, we think that through our worry, we can somehow ensure some certainty for some future events, whether it be tomorrow or in the next couple of weeks. We worry under this false pretense, under this false notion that we can attain some sort of certainty for future events in our lives. But we all know that worry doesn't add any value or enhance anything in your life other than break you down, other than disrupt the plan that God has for you and disrupt the vision that God wants you to have when it comes to your spiritual life. Worrying is like prayer in reverse. Prayer generally makes issues smaller. Worrying generally makes issues bigger. So that's a good way of remembering it. Prayer makes issues smaller because we allow God to actually carry our burdens. 1 Peter 5:7, cast your anxieties on him and he will care for you. So prayer generally makes issues smaller. Worrying generally makes issues bigger. Because when we worry, what are we doing when we worry? Right? What are we actually doing? We have sort of cleared out all of the other arenas and all the other issues of life, and we have focused our attention on one thing. Am I going to get into that school? Am I going to pass the bar exam? Am I going to, be able to achieve what I need to achieve? Is she going to call me back? Are they going to keep me in the company? Am I going to get fired? Is our industry going to survive? Is our business going to survive the pandemic, for instance? We get so hyper-focused on one thing, and with worrying, the problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and we are just totally distracted by something that we can't really, in most cases, do anything about. So we are honestly hurting ourselves when we do worry, because we are making the issues much bigger than it actually is, and we are allowing our emotions to fluctuate in a very intense way, which causes us to be emotionally exhausted, which causes us to be depressed, anxious, so on and so forth. From the last video, we know if you want to know what you are really most devoted to, track your worries, because your worries lead you to the point of your greatest devotion. And I've emphasized this in all three of my videos. I really hope that you all at least remember this one sentence. If you want to know what you're most devoted to in life, track your worries, because your worries lead you to the point of your greatest devotion. Your devotion impacts your emotion. Your devotion impacts your emotion. So one of the best questions that we can ask as we think about the things that we worry about is this: if the things I worry about reflect my devotions, what am I most devoted to? That's where Jesus kind of picks up the thought and takes us to the solution, because if what we're devoted to determines what we're worried about, then if we could redirect our devotion, we could conquer, in many cases, our incessant need or feeling like we need to worry about the future. So just shifting your devotion, or even spreading out your devotion on many different things and not fixating on one thing will actually allow you to diminish that need inside of you to worry about your future. So we're going to pick up in verse 27. Those of you who have been following along know that we've been going through Matthew chapter 6, and that we've been going through these verses slowly and carefully in order to dissect what Jesus is talking about. So we're going to pick up at verse 27. If you have your Bible, please flip with me. I'm going to read 3 verses that we've covered in the last video just to get us going, just for us to have some context. And then we're going to jump into the second part of this passage. I'll just read through, and then we'll pick up where we left off. So Matthew 6:27, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And the answer is no. And Jesus is basically saying, how many of you have worried so much that you've taken hours off your own life, and you've worried so much that you've taken hours off your friends, your cousins, your family's life? And we would all raise our hands, because there are definitely moments in our own lives where we spiral out of control, we are emotionally unstable, and we let the stress, become greater and greater and greater each and every day. Matthew chapter 6, verse 28 says, and why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Matthew 6:29. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. And remember, in the last video, we discussed that Jesus says, look at the birds of the air, right? He uses this analogy. And we would say, in our modern society, we don't have time to look at birds. What do birds have to do with us? We have a much more complicated life than the birds. So why is Jesus using birds? Jesus also said, look at the flowers of the field. And we say, flowers don't really correlate with where we are as a society. It doesn't make much sense. The analogy doesn't make any sense. But if Jesus were to tell us the same message, but in our own terms, this is what he would say. Whether it's, I've got to pay my mortgage and I got to work on my 401k, Jesus says, I want you to consider what I have done, have been doing. I created everything. Don't you believe that, right? Jesus, or God, he created the economy. He created the flowers of the field, the birds of the air. They have instincts. They fly south and they come back. And the flowers break through the soil, and there is the circle of life. So Jesus is basically telling all of us, I am able to take care of the flowers, to take care of the birds, even though they don't do anything on their own to ensure their survival. God makes sure that they are taken care of. So why can't God do the same for you? Matthew 6:30. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? And then the final bit of Matthew chapter 6, verse 30 says, you of little faith. So Jesus is saying, okay, let me get something straight. You believe God created everything. You believe the birds figured the whole thing out because God put it in them. You believe the flowers came up and they die and they replenish and they seed, and the bees and the whole thing. We all believe that. You think God did all that. So why don't you think God can take care of you? Why can't you believe that God can clothe you? Jesus is saying, look, you've already believed the hardest part of the gospel. Why don't you just let your faith go to the next step and say, I don't know how things are going to work out. I don't know how my future is going to end up. I can't control the future. I've spun, I've sowed, I've reaped, and I've saved. I've done all I can do. I've paid my bills. I've worked hard. I've studied hard in my life. I filled out my applications. I showed up to the interview. I've done everything I want to do. I can trust God with the next series of nows. I can trust God with tomorrow. If God is able to do all these different things for you and for me, then that is plenty of evidence, plenty of insurance that God also cares about your tomorrow as well. The reason you're so worried is because your faith is so small. Okay? If you worry in life, that's because your faith in God is at an all-time low. There's a relationship between faith and your worry. People with huge faith don't worry much or at all. In fact, they bother you. When you see these people and they're going through the many stresses of life, their life might even be more complicated and stressful than yours, but they are not anxious, they are not depressed, but rather they are at peace for some reason. They have the same set of circumstances you do, and they're not worried at all. And you're like, you need to be worried just like I am. I'm dealing with stress. I'm dealing with all this on my own. Why aren't you worried? Why aren't you stressed? What is going on in your life? The rest of us are worried, and we tell these people who have big faith, you need to worry as well. Join us. Why are you at peace when everything around you is at its tipping point, when everything around you is not in your control? And some of you have had the privilege of interfacing or having friends or living close to people who really don't worry about their lives. In fact, their circumstances are even worse than yours. Their future is darker, their future is unsure, uncertain, and you talk to them and have done all they can do and they don't seem to worry about anything in their lives, about their future. They don't even seem to be afraid of what is to come. And you think what I think when you meet these people, and you think, I don't know if I could handle it. If I had their lives, I would probably spiral out of control. I would probably lose it. I wouldn't be able to process the daily events of that life. I would be a nervous wreck, etc., etc. If that happened to me, I would drink more, I would meditate, I would take drugs. My family would self-destruct. My parents would get on my case. I don't know how I would get out of bed in the morning if I was going through all that. These are different thoughts, examples of thoughts that we have when we meet people who go through so much in their lives, but yet they still are happy, they're still joyful, and they still have peace. Why is that? How are they able to do that? It's because you've just met someone with big faith. Because the bigger your faith is, the smaller your worry is. The bigger your faith, the smaller you worry. Matthew 6:31. So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? Now, as we said last week, the whole phrase, right? What shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? Those are not really worry points of our culture. We don't wake up every morning and say, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have clothes for work. I don't know if there's food for a last meal. Those are not thoughts for most of us. But this isn't what most of us worried about. We are worried about some things that could lead us to the place where we would say, what shall we eat, what shall we drink, and where shall we live, and what shall we wear? But for the people in his culture, in Jesus' culture, it was day to day. It was hand to mouth. They had to, every single day prepare, and there was a lot of uncertainty of their future, much more uncertainty than ours today. If Jesus was speaking today, he may say something like, so don't worry, saying, where am I going to get a job in this economy? How am I going to sell a house in this economy? How am I going to pay for my kids' tuition? How am I going to apply for a scholarship? How am I going to get to school? How am I going to ace this test? How am I going to get into that grad school? How am I? He says, don't spend your time being stressed over all these things. Listen carefully, not because they're not important, okay? Jesus is telling us not to stress, not because they're not important. It is because they're important, not because you should be careless and not care. That's not his point. He says, don't worry about these things, because after everything that I've done for you, worrying should be the least of your problems. After everything I've done for you, there's no point, honestly, to sit around worrying about the future. Instead, let me come and intervene, the only person that actually has any control in your future, whereas you do not. Matthew 6:32, it says, for the pagans. Okay, there's that phrase. Now, this is Jesus' word, not mine. And the pagans, as we all know, they're people generally that don't believe in God, don't believe there's a personal God, don't believe that there's a God that answers your prayers. Matthew 6:32, for the pagans run after all these things. Now, this is a very important little phrase. When he says the pagans run after, that's parallel to worry. That's parallel to seek. That's parallel to devote themselves to. Jesus is saying, look, you guys believe there is a God. He's talking to all of us. You guys believe there's a God. You believe God did everything that you see around you. If you are so stressed over these important things, these critical things, if you are so stressed out and bent out of shape over the things in your life about the uncertainty in your future, and you're so distracted that you're acting like people who don't even believe there is a God, you're practically living your life as if you were an atheist. If you are worrying, if your faith in God is diminished, or you just don't believe that God will be able to handle your situation, you are practically living life as an atheist. This is what you're saying. Yes, I believe. I believe that God did everything. I believe that God has the power. But I have to worry, though. I have to stress out. I have to over-medicate. I have to take the edge off. And Jesus is saying, if you do that, you are acting like a person who doesn't even believe in God. They should be able to look at your life and say, wow, but you don't seem worried. I mean, you seem to care. You seem to be a responsible person, but aren't you worried about everything in your life? Aren't you afraid? How do you sleep at night? Aren't you freaked out? What are you going to do? Why don't you seem to be as out of control as my other friends who have the same issues as you? Jesus says to all of us that this is our opportunity to shine brighter than ever before. You know, I think as Christians, this is our opportunity to show the world what the light of Jesus is all about, because we are at a place as a nation, we are at a place as a people where there's more to worry about than there ever has been before. At least that's the perception, right? Especially in our society, there's so much uncertainty around us, and it is very easy to stress out, to worry, to be anxious, so on and so forth. Which means for those of us who face those same circumstances but refuse to be bound by worry, our light in your light is going to shine brighter from that. And Jesus is saying, look, if you give into worry and you get sucked into worry and stress and anxiety and you get distracted by it, there might as well not even be a God for you. You're acting like everybody else, and here is your opportunity to shine brighter and tell others that life is hard. It is. I will agree 100%. Life is hard, and every single one of us are going through our own different situations. And many times it seems like, we are worried about taking on the burden ourselves. We don't like to share it to our family or friends. We think that we can handle it on our own and that eventually it will all work out. But sometimes things don't work out that way. And the only thing that you're doing is punishing yourself instead of getting the help that you need when it comes to trusting in God to ensure your future. So please do not be like the general public whose faith is diminished and is taken away from God, but rather have faith. When you have faith, then you will worry less because you trust God that even though I don't know what you're doing, even though I don't know your plan, even though I don't know what's going to happen once my application is submitted, or I don't know what's going to happen when, I get married or get a milestone, whatever it may be. I don't know how any of this is going to play out, but God, I know that everything that has happened in my life so far has been part of your plan, and you have blessed me beyond comprehension. So why can't God do the same thing for you in your future? Don't worry. Don't act like everybody else. Don't act like an atheist. Rely on the God that loves you very much. Don't try to take on the world yourself, because there's a God who is willing to hold your right hand and lead you through the valley of the shadow of death. But if you don't want him to, and if you don't let him, then there's nothing that God can do for you. And with that, I will end this video. Thank everyone for your constant support. I always really appreciate it. I made a new playlist for this series, so you know where to go if you missed a video. This is a topic that everyone struggles with, especially as you get older. Um, the chance to be stressed out, to be anxious. It's easier as you get older, especially with more responsibilities and with more things to worry about. But I really hope that as you are watching these videos, the little tips that I'm giving you will really help, um, and that it will help your spiritual growth. We shouldn't be a people, this YouTube family, we shouldn't be a people that hear these videos and then just go off and do nothing about it. I really hope that those of you who are genuinely interested in enhancing your spiritual life, truly interested in strengthening your relationship with God, you'll hear what I have to say, but also you do your own research. Also, you read the Bible for yourselves, and then you pray about it, and then you apply uh, the wisdom that is revealed to me and the wisdom revealed to you. Your life will not be able to change. You will not be able to experience any sort of deliverance until you take those steps. So take them. Don't make excuses, and actually have faith in God. That God, I know you know what's best for me. I know the potential inside of me, and I just want to give it to you. And we should, because He is our Creator and our Heavenly Father. My hope and prayer from this series is that your burdens start to feel lighter. Is that you will learn to trust God each and every day more and more. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe. Please turn on those post notifications so that you do not miss a video. I post every week, and also feel free to comment if you want me to tackle on a series or want me to speak on a certain topic. Like, please comment, give me some ideas. I'll be happy to do them. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in. Take care, and God bless.